everybody, and welcome to another panel hosted by SheProp. This panel is called Can I Cosplay That? Navigating the World of Race and Culture in Cosplay. To tell you a little bit about SheProp before we get started, it is a growing community that is focused on supporting, empowering, and representing female, non-binary, and transgendered cosplayers, artists, and other makers. And you can watch these panels that we do through the SheProp YouTube channel or listen to them on the SheProp Talk podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're interested in joining us at the SheProp community, find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we will add links in the show or of the show in the notes to help you find us, and we'd love to have you. So thank you for joining us. So to introduce myself, my name is Abby. I'm also known as Abby Cat Cosplay. I have been cosplaying for about 5 years, and I'm going to be moderating this conversation today.
Hi y'all, I am Tiffany. I'm also known as Con from Pros and Cons Cosplay. I've been cosplaying for probably around a decade at this point, I guess. I'm usually in the cosplay competition scene, so we see a lot of questions about what is accuracy in trying to portray a character. I also did a lot of research for my master's thesis about race in Japan, as well as how kind of Blackness is portrayed there. I do a lot of work for diversity, equity, and inclusion during my daytime real job as well. So that's kind of why I really like talking about this.
Hello everyone, my name is Monica and I'm also known as Geeks A Go-Go. I have been cosplaying since 2014 and I've won several awards through competitions out here in Chicago and the Midwest. I've done a lot of panels on diversity on library conventions out here in Chicago, and I'm also a member of the Chicago POC cosplay community, or people of color cosplay community.
So hi, I'm Jamila of Black Cosplay. I've been cosplaying for about 10 plus years now, and I have recently started judging, so I do focus a little bit about like what counts as accuracy, and then I've also done a couple different diversity panels, as well as just generally talked about that in the community online, etc. So I feel very passionate about talking about it and like what works and with cosplaying.
My name is Abby. I go by Babs Cosplay. I have been cosplaying for about 8 years now. The reason why this is so important to me is I actually have a show on Amazon called Black and Blue and on YouTube, and we literally discuss with other POCs, and all we do is discuss about inclusivity and diversity in all forms of media, whether it's comics, cosplay, everything. I also am on the diversity and inclusion committee of the Seattle Film Task Force here, where we're trying to bring more diversity to film sets, along with currently getting my certification for diversity and inclusion at Cornell University. I am also a sensitivity reader and writer for a lot of the authors that are here in the Pacific Northwest area. So.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. Sorry, Shady has also decided to make a brief appearance. But I am really excited to talk about this because it is very current well, it's always been current, but it's in the news a lot right now. And it's a conversation that we're having a lot right now. And we are seeing issues come up in the cosplay community that are surrounding these topics we're gonna talk about. And so I think we just need to have a really honest, informative conversation with everybody. I do want to take just a minute to define the terms that we're going to be using for the people listening, just so they know how we are defining them for the purposes of this conversation. Some people may have a few variations on how they use these terms, but this is how we're moving forward. We are going to be talking about blackface a lot. This is one of the older terms that we will be using. It's been around for a very long time, and this is when dark makeup is worn as by a performer in a minstrel show in a caricature of the appearance of a Black person. more current terms include things like brownface and racefacing. These are to be inclusive to cultures that are not Black. So Latinx and Asian cultures also can experience this same treatment, essentially, and race-face encompasses all of that. We will also be talking about cultural appropriation, which at times is also phrased as cultural misappropriation, and it's the adoption of an element or elements of one culture by members of another culture. And cultural elements that may have deep meaning to the original culture may be reduced to exotic fashion or toys or a trend. And then we will also talk about whitewashing. That one was the hardest for me to find like an encompassing definition for, because it's a very new term and it is changing a lot these days. But it's portraying characters who are non-white or of indeterminate race as white, also removing non-white characters and people from a narrative or story, including historical narratives or stories. So those are the terms we're going to be using a lot today. And I want to just jump right into it. And I'm going to start with Tiffany. Blackface has been around for a long time. And can you tell us a little bit about where it started and the history of it? Because that's really going to inform how people feel about it today.
Yeah, like you mentioned, blackface has been around for, it's a very old, I don't want to say tradition because that sounds a lot more positive than it is, but a very old thing. So we're looking at something that kind of developed in like the early 1800s or so, like 1830s about. And it was a way for white people to create caricatures or sort of comic representations of Black people, particularly like slaves. And so they would often darken their skin with like shoe polish and use like really like dark red makeup to highlight like a wide lip shape, and just really go in on like Black stereotypes as being like lazy and hypersexual and just like all the bad things, like all the bad stereotypes about Black people, and perform these in front of audiences for like laughs. So this has historical roots, but it still continues on today. I think a lot of people are like, well, that happened a long time ago. No, y'all, this continues to happen. Like there's some pretty good recent examples as well. But some of the ones I think y'all might be familiar with them. If you think of like Breakfast at Tiffany's, Mickey Rooney cosplayed as it was a caricature of a Japanese person. And, you know, that would be kind of race facing. You see blackface, maybe if you kind of look it up, maybe it might be a little bit old, but like Roland Howard would darken his skin and to look like Black women. And I'm blanking on his name, maybe one of y'all remember his name, but he did like a skit with like Whoopi Goldberg like back in the day and like did a whole blackface thing. And you know, these are things you see around the world as well. It's not just an American construction. If you look at, for example, kind of in the Western European region, you might have heard of Zwarte Piet. That's a caricature of a Black person. That kind of came up in the mid 19th century or so as well. So, and these are global things. You see it around the world, a lot of different caricatures of people of color. Black is starting kind of, I guess, the monumental example we have is of Black people, but it's a global problem.
Thank you. Now, we also see blackface and race facing, well, not also, it's generally seen as in a negative light, where the characters that are portrayed in blackface tend to be villains. They tend to be, it's done in a mocking way. So how is that used? How is it used to further dehumanize the characters and the people that they're portraying?
Because it's making your skin tone into a costume, right? So I think anything that you put into sort of a costume form, it automatically kind of reduces its essence a little bit. You are creating a consumable piece of a human life, and not only is it you know, it's offensive because you're looking at somebody taking our real lived experiences and putting it on their face. You know, I can't not be Black. I don't want to not be Black, but it's like I can't not be Black. You know, I can't wash off the politicized nature of my skin like these white cosplayers, these white actors can do. At the end of the day, they can walk down the street, don't have to worry about any of the, you know, the the offensive statements or the stereotypes.
Mhm.
Yeah, they don't have to
Yeah.
worry about any of that stuff. They could just wash off at the end of the day and continue to go be white and
Mhm.
live their little, lives. So to that, it kind of, it looks like you're not taking our lived experiences and our traumas, seriously.
Mhm.
And, of course, we also have this history of blackface being used against Black people, people of color, to dehumanize us already. So
Mhm.
it's this kind of like, it hasn't been long enough to where we've kind of
Mm-mm.
forgotten that historical memory or gotten on it, and society hasn't moved to the point where we're good with race. We're still
Mhm.
living in a very racialized world.
Yeah.
So it's almost arrogant to think that people can just put this on and it's like, oh, it's just for
Mhm.
fun for cosplay. It's not always done to demean, I guess. That might not always
Yeah.
be the
Yeah.
impetus, but it's still kind of arrogant to think that we've moved beyond where racism
Mhm.
is still an issue and that that's somehow not still an issue in cosplay. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and also, like, if you look at the roots of it, like with cinema history, so many times blackface was used so they didn't have to hire Black actors, because they either had the roles where they couldn't have a white actor and any other race, because they also saw that with yellow facing, where they wouldn't hire an Asian actress or a Black actress to be with a male or female counterpart.
Absolutely.
Because if they had any sort of relationship, that's just not okay. So it was also keeping people out of those roles. Or if they did have them, they'd be like the non-talking role. And then if they did want a talking role, they're like, well, we could put that guy in blackface. So it was just another way to like remove people from capitalizing on the very thing that they're selling. It's like, oh, we want Black people, but we don't want Black people.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing. So like when you see it with cosplay, someone's like, oh, I love this Black character, but like I don't want the Black person part, so I'm gonna be them. Instead of just being themselves and appreciating the character, they're taking the whole thing just for the appearance and benefiting from it, but then they're gonna exclude the people who do look like that. So it's part of it is that you're gaining something, but you're not living the experience and you're not supporting that actual person. You would rather just the like trappings of it, but not the real person. So it just, it's continuing. It just, people are seeing, and even in those movies, I'm sure plenty of those actors, and some of them have definitely, well, some of them are dead now, but like a lot of them have like changed their opinions and been like, yeah, it was bad. I shouldn't have done that. Because they didn't do it out of malice. They did it because they really liked that role or they liked whatever. But it wasn't the best way to go about it. So it's like, it's not always from a mean place, but it is. That's just part of what it's from. So.
As like history also, a lot of those Black actors couldn't read, right? Because they weren't afforded the opportunities to read. So instead of actively going out to find Black or African actors that could actually read a script, you know, they'd rather just have, or, you know, or pay even. They also didn't, there's that pay scale too. They also didn't want to have to pay, you know, actors of color, because then that would put them as the same level as the white actors. And, you know, that was another way of making sure that there was that segregation that was involved still in the film. And it's still prevalent in the film community too.
Yep, this is still
I don't know if you've heard, but, you know, there's a lot of stunt people who are, their skin tones are darkened because they can't find a POC stunt actor. I forgot what her name is, but the new show Stargirl, the actress, the Black actress on there, she had an experience where she was on another show and she took a picture and she had actually said something about it, but her stunt woman was a white woman who was in, who they made blackface.
Oh gosh.
You know, and she went to the director and was like, why in the world did you guys not hire, you know, a woman of color as a stunt person? And someone had came up to her, I think it was a director or producer, was like, you should be happy that you got this role, so you should go back to your you know, your trailer until we call you for your scene.
Wow.
You know, and she just posted about it on her Instagram story, I want to say like 2 or 3 weeks ago, specifically about that. Because I mean, that was just years ago. It wasn't like centuries or anything.
Yeah,
or
we're
decades.
not, this is still a problem.
You know, like maybe last year, I think that she had that experience. So it's still happening in our world right now.
Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned not hiring people of color. And if you're looking at historically, the minstrel shows, they were meant to be funny and it was mocking, but they would also perform music written and popularized by Black people, but they would perform it, white people would perform it in blackface. So it was not just mocking, it was also stealing culture in that regard. So it's a pretty gross history. Yeah. And it's still happening, which is terrible. Now, you mentioned a little bit, Abby, how that performer was expected to be grateful for the opportunity that she had. Keep her mouth shut, don't make waves. So we're also seeing that, things like that in the cosplay community, where Black and people of color are facing more intense scrutiny, more intense gatekeeping. And Jamila, could you talk a little bit about that kind of experience and perspective on this?
Yeah, I mean, like, I know so many Black cosplayers I've talked to, or any cosplayer of color really, where like they have told me about that moment they put their cosplays on, they look great, they like every detail they had, but they are just so stressed about going out there because somebody is going to be like, oh, but you're the wrong color, and you're like, I have everything, everything. But that's the one thing you're going to focus on. And it really is. It can come down to that, to the point that another person who might be white passing, and the character doesn't even have to be white, because I'm looking at you, anime characters, most of them are Japanese.
Yup.
Hello.
I always forget that.
They're not white.
Not white.
No, she's not. But that will be the thing that people will like focus on. Even if the other person has a completely not perfect matching every detail costume, no one's gonna say anything, because they're like, at a glance, they're like, oh, checks all the boxes, looks like the illustration because the skin tone matches what you see. But that's really a crazy I mean, it's already a crazy expectation for anybody to look exactly like an illustrated character, even a movie character. They had like thousands of dollars in a staff, or like they're literally animated, but for some reason you will be compared. And so the standard is super, super high for any Black or POC character cosplayer to do those characters, unless they happen to also be dark skinned. And so if that happens, you will see they'll get shared when they do the canon or Black or whatever race the person is character. They'll get those boosted. People will be like, oh, they look amazing. You see them do the other one, people are like, nah, it's all right. Or, oh, why are you doing that? Why are you making that character Black? Why did you ruin them? And you don't see anyone say that when the character is brown and a white person cosplays it. It almost never comes up. In fact, sometimes you'll see people be like, it's canon. And you're like, wait a minute. How are you canon? You're not even the matching skin tone. I do the same thing in the opposite direction, and you automatically have to mention it. That just doesn't correlate. So there's just like, for some reason, you don't, it's not even an even playing field, because you can't win in either direction, and it doesn't make any sense. So for someone to be like, oh, I'm in a brown face, like it's no big deal, you're already winning even when you don't do it. So when you do it, you shouldn't win again, because you're now doing something that's even more wrong, and you're being supported for it. Yeah. So it's already, the standards are already crazy high. So when you do brown face, you're basically telling that Black cosplayer, that Latinx cosplayer, that it doesn't matter what you do, whether you paint yourself or not paint yourself, I'm always going to do better, because I can take your skin tone and I can do it without your skin tone and do it better either way, even if they don't do it better. But that's how everybody rewards it. And it's just, we have to work on that, because it's not about looking exactly like the character. It's about showing that you love the character, you know, whether it's about the details or how you perform it, or just the fact that you put on like the outfit, like that could be it. But people aren't thinking about that. No,
yeah, and have these blackface cosplayers be like, oh, I left off half the embellishments, but I decided to like super darken my face. You weren't even worried about the rest of the costume. Exactly. You just hyperfixated on the brown part. Like, it doesn't even look, first of all, it never looks good. Like, it never looks good. I don't know why people just seem to never, y'all don't know Black people, this is not how we look. But the other thing is that that's what they hyperfixate on. You're not worrying about the lights that you need to add. Hell, you're not even trying to like learn how to fly. Like, you know, you don't have superpowers, but somehow focus on the Black part. It's like, so it's mind blowing.
Can I give an example of literally this that happened?
Yes.
I was with Abby. You know, I'm usually with Abby and Jerica.
Yeah.
who are two beautiful Amazonian women, right? Like massively, we're all tall, so it's like, oh, cool, I don't feel weird, right? Because I'm always with other really, really tall women.
As the
And we
person
were with,
standing next to you, I always feel like the little sister being
you
like, "Hey guys,
are!
wait for me," because I'm not tall.
But we love you though, because you're so cute and cuddly, and you're the one that talked about fun size, and I was so excited about that too. But yeah, we were at, it was my first time going to Wizard World. I think it was like 3 years ago, and I stopped because of a cosplay non-consent issue that they did not handle well. But we were all dressed. We decided one day, and Abby's brother was there too, Caleb. And we all decided that we were going to do an Emma Frost cosplay, all of us, like different versions of Emma Frost throughout the comics, right? Someone had did a fanfic of a male version of Emma Frost too, so her brother did that. And we like all show up, and like, you know, people are like, oh my god, you guys look great, like I love your cosplay and everything. And someone came up to me and they're like, oh my god, that's a cute Storm. And I was like,
Oh,
It's like a trope at this point. Black person in a light color
like,
being
really is.
we're doing a group cosplay. Emma Frost. My hair is not white, it's blonde. You know, like I'll find the photo and send it to you, but it was so ridiculous. I was like, I'm literally in a group with a whole bunch of other Emma Frosts, and we're going around, and we're literally like trying to pull people who we see that are in Emma Frost cosplays just so we can like get like a cute, like, you know, group photos. And every single time someone thought I was Storm, and I was like, first of all, I've never seen Storm in a corset.
Nope.
Ever. You know, like, or a white corset at that matter too.
Yeah.
You know, it was so ridiculous. And it's literally that, you know, like we can all be doing the same exact cosplay or around the same idea of a cosplay, and people will still get it mistaken.
Now, that's gotta be hard for morale in general for people of color in the cosplay community. Have you found that it makes people not want to do it, or that people have quit because of that? Like, is that something that you have seen in your experience or with the other people that you cosplay with?
I've definitely heard it. I've heard from numerous Black people that are like, I'm too scared to cosplay because I'm worried about the comments I'm going to get. I'm worried about the negative feedback, about not being accurate. I don't have a canon body. Like, I'm worried about all this discrimination. I've heard this in the contest scene as well. Like, I'm afraid to compete because I'm afraid the judges will tell me I'm not going to win because of skin tone. You know, and like, these fears are valid because they happen. Like, it's not like it's never happened before. And it's heartbreaking. You're like, I would say most of my cosplay experiences are by and large positive. I have a great time in cosplay. I love doing it. I love the people I've met and the experiences that I have. But, you know, sometimes those things happen and it just like gets to you. It's like, why can't I just live my life and do what all these other cosplayers are doing without having the added bonus of worrying about my race?
Yeah.
And so, you know, when you hear that from other cosplayers, you're just like, I want them to understand that, you know, there's going to be jerks regardless of wherever it is that you go. And you have to find your community that can support you through that and, you know, fight for it to end. But yeah, it definitely happens. And I've definitely heard a lot of people that have shied away from wanting to do cosplay and even some that have quit because they're so tired of the backlash.
Yeah, I've even heard people be, because I'm a part of this massive POC cosplayers group, you know.
The one on Facebook?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm the moderator. I'm one of the moderators.
Yeah, I was about to go, they
moderator.
What the hell? This is a small world.
It is. I know. It's
but no, I mean, I've seen people be suicidal, you know, because they just can't take the backlash anymore because they're so used to taking other backlashes by just being a person of color in life. You know, and here they are doing something that they love doing and they're getting crapped on for that. And so, you know, it gets to a point where you're literally talking people down off of ledges because they're just fed up. They're done. It's like nothing that they can do is good enough and they just don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, this culture of like finding, especially online, I feel like sometimes it's way worse online than it is at the cons.
Yes.
Because like I know people are like, I'm scared of going to con. I'm like, I was too. The first con I went to, people were like super excited and super happy and no one gave a crap. But like online,
People are bold.
They're just
They
like,
have
oh, I'm
no
not in
fear.
your face,
The
so I can just
trolls
say the
come
worst
out.
stuff. Yes, they really, really, really do. And like, they'll find, like, people will go out of their way to find pictures of people and then like get it to a group, so they'll just start spamming them with hate. Like, I've seen some people get like literally pushed away from their social media or whatever because like just a horde of people will come out of the woodworks to make them feel like crap for doing a perfectly fine thing. Like, even most recently, like on Twitter, there's one girl who decided to do Nezuko, and everybody came for her for no reason. She looked amazing, and it was just like, why is she getting hate? She just started. This was her first cosplay. That's how people responded. Like, how do you think that's going to make someone want to do something if that's how you're going to respond? And it's just like, people don't think about the person they're hurting. I don't know why they want to do that. I don't know what possesses them. But there's a regular person who just liked the character just like you did. Why would you do that? That's just so harsh and
unnecessary. It is like, what do you get from this? You gain nothing.
Exactly.
You wouldn't do this to my face. I guarantee these people would not roll up to a con and be like, hey, say the same thing to your face.
I do like some of the positive connotations that come out from it, though. There was recently, and I think it's still going on too, but I'm forgetting what her name is. But she, there's a girl that took some very non-professional photos. You know, she's going out for Maxim, right? And this was like it's like a modeling competition. Maxim's new, model, right? And one of these other girls had taken a screenshot of some of her photos, posted it on her timeline, and started saying a whole bunch of racial connotations towards this girl. Like, can you believe that this girl even tried to submit to be a model? Yada, yada, yada. And there were like, someone saw it and like posted it in we're like also in this exposing racism in the Pacific Northwest group. And someone had shared it into our group, and can you believe that she made it all the way to the quarterfinals and is currently a finalist?
I saw that.
This girl, and she's still, she's still trying to get up there and everything. I think the last time I saw she was in second place, but I had posted it. I was like, hey guys, follow up. This is what's happening, and like people were trying to push her up to first place again because it's not about what your background like. I think she even had like a crock pot in the background. She's like, apparently she's cooking some food in her room, or and it was horrible. It was literally horrible. And this is like happening in so many different communities, not only cosplay, but people just feel like they have so much privilege, that they can literally deface another person and it just be completely okay.
So far we have been talking about this very much from an American perspective, because that's where we all live. But it is a different, the conversations around blackface are different in different countries. And I do want to hear from Monica about this because you have experience living in not just America. So how is it a conversation that's different? Is it a conversation in other countries? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It is very similar. Like I grew up in the Philippines. I didn't move out in the US until I was 21. And the culture is different, but when it comes to blackfacing, it is similar. And it's very disheartening because a lot of the people from my country and in my culture, they forget their roots. So just to give everybody kind of just I don't know if you guys know this, our indigenous people in the Philippines are actually dark skinned. Like they actually have really dark skin. They have really curly hair. And in our country, we call them the negritos and the ifogaos. They have, they're basically the part of the country that Spain wasn't able to colonize. So they are these remote people in our country out of like 7,000 islands that was untouched and was preserved from, like way back when. And it is quite unfortunate that the mentality back home is nobody takes blackface seriously. And in 2014, they had a TV show where they were portraying one of the negritos in TV, in the TV show, which a lot of people actually had a negative reaction to it. But at the same time, it's something that, and I'm ashamed to say this, it was instilled in us in our culture that having white skin, having to bleach your skin, and just being light skin is beautiful. And I think that is similar to a lot of like Asian countries. That's why you will see, actually, even when you're out here in Chicago, if you go to Seafood City, and this is like a Filipino grocery store, they have a whole shelf of like whitening products, like skin whitening products. It's still happening, it's still going on. And I've asked my friends, you know, if there are still people doing blackface and cosplay out there. And I know they didn't want to speak up about it because they know, you know, they don't want to get backlash on the internet and whatnot. But it is still happening. And for me, it's like, okay, it goes one of two ways. It's either they really, really like the character and want to color their skin like dark, or they're making fun of it. So it's a weird spectrum. It's either they really like the character or they really just want to make fun of it. And I think there is still a lack of education when it comes to that. Like, people need to be aware that this is wrong. Like, you shouldn't be doing stuff like this. And yeah, it's just so hard to believe how not a lot of people are very sensitive to just these portrayals. Like, oh, but I'm Filipino, you know, like our backgrounds is like this. It's like, no, it's not the same thing. Admittedly, you know, when the whole Black Lives Matter movement like happened, my eyes was really opened up. Like I thought I knew about Black cosplayers and issues, and, you know, issues has been going on. I'm in Chicago, and you don't hear a lot of this news because the media kind of just silence it. And that's the reality of it. When the whole Black Lives Matter movement like happened, hearing all of these stories come out was very eye-opening for me, because I didn't know it was that bad. Not because I didn't want to know about it, but because nobody talks about it. And it's just so sad. So yeah, like I am grateful moving out here. I know I've been subjected to a lot of like race issues, especially because I'm Asian. And just to give you guys a story, when I moved to Wisconsin, there's a lot in Madison around 2005. I'm surrounded by Caucasians, and it was quite a weird experience for me, because it almost as if they've never seen a Filipino before. Like, a lot of people, it really scared me. So I can't even imagine what everyone else is going through. Like, if that were the case, and, you know, Black people like live there too, is just, it blows my mind how, you know, the culture has to change, and education has to, you know, like being able to educate people is really important. And I actually want to thank Tiffany, because I know like she helped me like write our statement for Black Lives Matter, because I still want to keep learning about it. I'm not perfect, you know, like I still see myself a little bit as an outsider, because there's so much for me to learn with regards to this culture, and I'm so welcome to learn more.
So thank you for sharing that. And Abby, I know you have not always lived in the United States. Did you get to cosplay when you were in Europe at all, or were you a part of that scene? Or
no, I wasn't. Not as much because I'm old. And
What is old?
and cosplay wasn't really a thing when I was growing up. Like, I'm in my 40s. That's as far as I'll go.
I never honestly would not have guessed at all.
So yeah, cosplay wasn't really a thing when I was growing up. You know, cosplay is fairly new. I mean, it has been more than a decade that it's been going on, but you know, when I was growing up, we didn't have things like this. We didn't have things where, you know, it was okay for people to dress up as their favorite, you know, film characters or you know, cartoon characters or animation characters or comic book characters. You know, it wasn't prevalent, especially in England. I mean, it just got started. I mean, it got more popular, obviously, maybe about 20 or 30 years ago, but definitely not when I was a wee lass. And, you know, I want to make the statement that every single country that was prevalent in the recent Black Lives Matter movement understands that racism exists. Mm-hmm. And so for those countries that are saying, oh, my country is not racist or whatever, you're full of sorry. If I can say that.
We probably shouldn't, but we'll just tell Beverly to add bleeps. It'll be fine.
You're full of poppycock. I'll give that one to Beverly.
We can say doo-doo.
Okay.
I like that. Doo-doo.
Full of doo-doo. Sounds like my mom saying it. Like my mom's voice is reaching over. Yes, you want to say doo-doo? Okay, doo-doo. Right?
Oh my God.
But no, it kills me because I see, you know, these Italian cosplayers, which is a lie because I am part Italian, and you
know the one.
Yeah, not gonna say the bad word again, but like me and my son went to Milan because we were visiting our family in Torino, which is about 2 hours south of Milan, and we were like stuck in the Milano airport for about 3 or 4 hours because they had canceled our flight, and they were just the most nastiest people, like to other people of color. You know, it was like if you knew the person was of a different skin tone, lighter, right? It was bend over backwards, what can I do to help you? You know, whereas like me asking a question in Italiano, you know, it's like, no, sorry, I can't help you.
Dang.
You know, and that's Italy. Like there's so much prevalent racism there, especially from the northern countries towards the south, because when you get to Cecilia, you know, that's closer to Africa. So you have that mixture and that darker skin tone. So, you know, you constantly have you know, Sicilian people who are darker, that are considered mobsters and gangsters because of their literal skin tone. You know, everyone says Sicily is the bad place, right? Because most of the people there are darker, and that's how they see it. You know, black or color is always equated to something as bad, and it's so ridiculous. It happens in Germany. It happens in Sweden. You know, I don't care what anyone says.
That's where Black Peter is, right? Black Peter is Swedish.
Yeah. You know, so like the fact that people are like, I mean, I constantly see that as an excuse. Well, you know, in my country, we don't do racism. And I'm like,
I don't think you know your history.
I'm going to keep it to myself because I'm just there. Lord, there's something wrong with you because you are a liar. Sorry. It makes me so angry because they're making up excuses. They're telling straight lies, you know, to people's faces. And it just happened. One of my friends in the UK, Kisa, who does, I'm going to say Kasumi cosplay. You know, she's been dealing with it all the time, you know, trying to call out cosplayers who've been doing this stuff. And, you know, there's a lot of people that are like, oh, maybe I was wrong. and they'll be all, oh, I'm BLM, but you'll see in their history they've done like a lot of black facing, brown facing, yellow facing, you know, and it's just like, I'm sick and tired of that excuse, because it's just a lie. It really is. And if anyone sees someone doing that, you need to call them out, because they're literally lying to your face.
Yeah.
It happens. Racism is literally everywhere.
So I
share something that when before I moved into the US, so we were at the US consulate and we needed to take classes before we move out here, because I was getting my green card with my parents, and we needed to be subjected to so many freaking classes about American culture and get our shots, and it was a whole month of like ridiculousness.
It's
like
a horrible process.
It is a really horrible process. And you know, one of the classes, and I know I'm probably gonna get in trouble sharing this. One of the classes is they have a list of the different races that live in the US. And they had categorized, what do these people like to eat?
Yeah.
No.
She's absolutely right. I've seen
Are you
I've seen
seriously?
Yeah,
No.
I've seen it. Yeah.
Okay, this is I was like, this is an odd part to put in cultural
Citizenship test? Yeah.
So I'm like,
Oh my
okay, this is part
God.
of my test. All right, whatever. So I read through, right? I read through what white people like apple pie. I'm like,
okay,
like
lots of people like apple pie. It's good.
yeah, exactly, right? And then, you know, like when it goes like, you know, like Mexicans like tacos, and I'm like,
Tacos are delicious.
so I'm like, all right, where this go? You guys know where this is going, right?
Yeah.
Black people.
Wait, is it chicken or watermelon?
That's what I was gonna say.
Both,
I'm like, which one is it?
actually both. It's part of the list. And I'm like, but I love watermelon. Like,
I'm gonna die. I don't really like watermelon all that much. I guess I'll just
I
get my
like pumpkin
citizenship.
spice.
I don't get it. Like, I'm like, why? It just didn't, like, you know, indigenous Americans like corn. And I'm like,
Oh, there's so much wrong with all of this.
There's so much wrong.
it's like, you know,
That's what they teach
they actually had a list. I don't know if it still exists, because this was 2005.
Yeah.
That is way too recent.
I
That
know.
is not
like,
very
that
long
is
ago.
too recent.
I'm like, what is this? Like, why do we need to know what people like to eat? Because everybody likes to eat all of these things.
All of it.
Monica, I was not ready. I was not ready for that.
I don't get it. Like, I was like,
Like,
is this
Abby,
really
you see your
necessary?
face right now?
But it's part of it.
Abby, you see your face. Like, literally.
It was the dumbest thing. I thought it was the dumbest thing ever.
Yeah.
What is this?
Oh my God.
I'm literally
because
speechless.
you should want to be in the United States, so you should just do it and be happy with it, right? Like, that's
Pretty
literally
much,
the
yeah.
mentality.
Pretty much.
It's literally the mentality.
My sister-in-law got naturalized about maybe 8 years ago. And so I was watching her study for that, and she had note cards. She studied so hard for that test. And my dad is a history buff, so he's like, we're doing this together. This will be great. And the amount of information that she needed to know to be naturalized into the United States about civics and history and the Constitution and all of this stuff, they don't teach it in American schools.
No.
No, it's
They
too much.
Yeah,
don't.
my parents went through that. It is a lot. You have to learn a lot.
Yeah,
crazy.
my mom was over here asking me who was the first president, and I was like, Mom, you realize that I grew up in England? I don't know of your president.
I don't know.
Because
I'm gonna use
she
that.
sent me to go live with her sister, right?
Mhm.
And so my whole growing up was surrounded by English history, you know. So I often do this bit where, you know, we talk about how, you know, colonization happened and everything, and, you know, I do it because it helps people see how stupid they're being, right? And I say, and like, you know, well, being from England, all we were trying to do is make sure that you guys were as posh and as civilized as us. I don't seem to understand why you would not think that that's okay. And they realize, they're just like, oh, I mean, you know, sorry again, but like seriously, you know, like that's literally like, you know, what, coming from a country that was, you know, like having half of that culture, you know, be a part of my culture growing up. It's like you realize that, you know, all of these other countries that just wanted to do their own thing and be on their own, you know, did not need, you know, big mother or big father coming in to say, hey, do it this way. Sorry, you're doing it the wrong way. Quit that. Stop before I keep hitting you on the head. You know, it's so stupid. It really, really is. You know, that's why, like, what Monica was saying is, you know, that whole culture, that civilization. I mean, you can even go back to Australia and Aborigines, right? You know, they had this whole beautiful culture and civilization until England came in.
I wonder if England could just be like the
And we
reason for
messed
life.
everything up.
And then England showed up.
Like, well, at least everyone likes drinking tea, so I guess that's wonderful. Right?
There we go. But they took that from China.
Right.
So,
I know. Not even their thing.
not even y'all.
So I do want to switch gears a little bit and start focusing kind of on the cosplay aspect of it. I've loved what we've talked about so far. It's all great stuff, but let's get to the practicalities of being a cosplayer as a Black or POC person, or somebody who likes Black or POC characters, and how we can make that work as cosplayers. So let's talk a little bit about lesser forms or lesser known forms of blackface, and that is how blackface can take place in the Black and POC communities, because it can, and also hairstyles. I think that's a huge thing to get into. So who wants to tackle that?
Let's do it. I'll start.
Okay.
I got so much to say about it.
Go.
So with
So
colorism
much
is
to
what we
say.
call much. Colorism is a big thing in people of color communities, right? Colorism is not only being a person of color, but kind of your proximity to how light-skinned you are, how close you are to whiteness in terms of tonality. As a somewhat light-skinned Black person, you have to be cognizant of sometimes your darker-skinned colleagues and friends will go through a different set of experiences than you will as a lighter-skinned person.
Absolutely.
So, you know, until I'm still Black, like, you know, still have those same experiences, but darker-skinned Black people have a lot more to deal with in terms of like the negative comments. I think are oftentimes amplified because of their darker skin. And you know, so sometimes, and I think one of the more famous cases of this was Zoe Saldana, I don't even feel bad about naming her by name, was it was in a movie, was it Nina Simone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they darkened her skin because she's a pretty light-skinned Black woman,
Yeah.
and darkened her
It was,
skin
Zoe
Zoe
Saldana.
Saldana.
Yes.
yeah, Zoe Saldana, yeah.
'Cause she just
Darkened her
said something
skin.
about that.
She finally apologized, like, what, 10 million years later. So
Yeah.
darkened her
Wow.
skin
Yeah.
to mimic, you know, that.
Yeah.
And again, the whole point of not doing blackface is that you are mocking the lived experience of people of color, and even within your own community. So
Yes.
no, just use your normal foundation whenever you're
Yep.
cosplaying as
Don't do
somebody
it.
else. I'm sure we'll probably get into like the little particularities about what that looks like too, but in general, just stick with your own skin tone unless you're like an alien race. Nobody cares about that. I don't even entertain the argument. Well, what about aliens? Like, we're not talking about aliens. I'm so sorry that people of color are so foreign to you that you think that we're from another planet, but that's not who we're talking about. But you don't just leave your skin tone the normal foundation if you're going as a natural skinned person. So yeah, you do see some of that happening. And I think the question of hair texture is a really interesting one as well. Because normally, kind of across the board, I do not care if people who are not of my racial group cosplay as characters from my racial group. However, there are numerous caveats, and one of the things I think is hair texture. So hair texture is also highly politicized. If you look at even a couple of years ago, and even some current workplace and schools, their dress codes are not meant to accommodate the way that our hair grows out of our scalp. Like it's curly, it's kinky, it is like this beautiful like mass of fluffy goodness, and it is seen oftentimes in more of our like kind of white supremacist power structures as being unprofessional. At a certain point, like they don't allow dreads in some places, dreadlocks, or braids or things like that because they think that it is unprofessional or doesn't look clean just because they don't understand Black hair. And, you know, I'm like, y'all, you don't even understand them. Some of the rumors here about that.
Trying to put a comb through this crap, seriously.
Right, it is too much. It is like, it's a lot of work to keep, you know, it looking gorgeous. So, so calling that unprofessional. And so since our hair is so highly politicized, wearing that same thing in cosplay can also be kind of a recapitulation of that. You know, I'm putting on your lived experience as a costume. So I say avoid it, just avoid it. In general, right, I don't care if you cosplay as like T'Challa or if you cosplay as Shuri or something, but avoid, you know, just don't black hairstyles. Use your regular hair, like a gun or something. I don't, you know, something like that is fine.
And there's so many ways to interpret it. Like I've seen people go, okay, this character has has an afro, and they'll just do a curly wig. It'll be fine. Like a curly wig is close enough. If the character has dreads, you can just do, you know, plaits, like just your own hair braided, or like something that's more like of a chunk look, but clearly not dreads. Like I've seen people do all sorts of stuff, or they do like ringlets. Like there's lots of options to not go into the dark place.
That's what we heard. Don't go to the dark place, exactly. It is not for your hair texture. Touch it. Like the dreading and braids and things are not made for certain types of hair.
And most of those wigs look like crap. I'm gonna be honest.
They're so bad.
Some of them look so bad. I mean, there are nicer ones now made by Black people, but they weren't made for that. Don't be buying it for that.
Right. I like every time I see like a person wearing like real, like having dreads in their hair or has braided their hair, they're not supposed to be doing that, you know. I'm just like, well, karma's going to come back at you from stress-based alopecia. It's all going to come out. You will have no hairline at the end of this. So, karma.
You know, I look at those like afro wigs and they look either like the rainbow clown wig I had when I was 5, or they look like every bad perm that a man in the 80s had. Like, those are your options. Don't wear them.
They're not good.
They're bad.
Oh, God.
That's not what our hair looks like.
Someone had just posted in one of our cosplay groups, like it was Mekhi Phifer when he did Mile High, and he had that dreaded wig. I don't know if you
Mile High, or are you talking about 8 Mile?
8 Mile, that's it.
Okay.
I was like, oh, the different.
Like, what?
8 Mile, when he had that dread wig, and then it was like the king from Walking Dead, and what the guy who is the star of Blackish, like he had a dreaded wig at one point too. And someone had did from 1 to 5, like which wig is bad. And there was another guy from Walking Dead, a Black man that had like a braided afro wig. I don't know if you guys watched that show, but
what?
The comparison,
I get zombie mares. I can't watch.
Someone was like, through 1 through 5, which wig which wig is the worst? And I was literally all of them.
These are all trash.
They're all bad. All bad. You know, and I'm like, these are like, you know, probably like really expensive wigs that were made, but they just did such a bad job.
They spent all that money and did such a bad job.
Yeah.
I feel bad.
It's a bit of a sidebar, but as somebody who loves wigs very much, like when I spot one when I'm watching TV, I'm like, I have better wigs than that I wear sometimes for fun, and you have all of this money.
I know.
And that's what you put on your head.
That's right. The cosplayers are those judgmental people about wigs on set. You're just like,
You're like, how'd you mess
hairline.
that up?
Right.
Yeah.
I think I was watching, I don't even watch Game of Thrones, but I just sat in for like one since my sister watches it, and I was like, what did they do to her hair? Like, why does it look like that? Or was it The Witcher? The Witcher was bad too. I was like,
they had
this
some,
wig.
they had some bad ones.
Yeah, and that
I know cosplayers before the Witcher show came out that have way better wigs.
Right?
Right. Like 10 more minutes and a different hairline would have saved that. But okay. What do I know?
So you did mention some alternatives. Like I can think of one character where I think of the hair, the textured hair, natural textured hair is really key to portraying who that character is. The one I'm thinking of is Moss from IT Crowd. Like, I think if you don't have a side parted afro, you're going to look like Stewart from Mad TV. So, like, if you have a character like Moss, where his hairstyle is so key to communicating who he is, is that somebody that you should just avoid if you don't have natural textured hair or if you're not a person of color?
I don't, you know what? I saw a guy at Dragon Con that did Moss, and I was so excited because he was a white guy. He didn't plane his skin, you know, or anything like that. He did, it was like a regular curly wig, not like Moss's afro texture, but it was just a regular curly wig that he parted, you know, down the center, down the side, like Moss does, and with a little triangle thing going on both sides. And I thought it was the coolest thing. I really did. You know, and this was like even before I had watched IT Crowd. You know, I didn't really know too much about it. I actually only started watching it because I heard that he was a perspective for Doctor Who. And it was like, yes, they're bringing a colored man onto the show as the Time Lord. No, they didn't do it. You know? So I started watching the show and I was like, okay, that's cool. Oh, he did that. He did that good. You know? And I don't even think that he'd ever cosplayed before. But at the same time, he was being cognizant of making sure that he wasn't appropriating anything. So I give so much props to that guy because I think he did an amazing job, you know, and Jarek, I got a chance to take a photo with him. I didn't because I was too shy. But it was so cool because they had both Moss and I forgot what the name of the other guy is, but
Roy.
So, you know, they had them just walking around and you obviously knew where they were from, mainly because of Moss, obviously.
Yeah.
But
Roy just looks like any other guy at a con.
Exactly, yeah, like any other IT nerd guy, right? Just walking around.
Came from work.
I loved it. I appreciated it very much because I think he did a really good job.
So even in cases like that, there is a way to make it work. There is a way to make it respectful.
Absolutely.
It
wasn't one of those weird kinky wigs or anything like that. Like he it was like a weird, like I want to say it was like a what's her name? Raggedy Ann.
Or Little Orphan Annie, maybe?
Little Orphan Annie. Like one of those kind of wigs.
Oh,
right? But the brown color. So it was like really curly with a brown color and he just parted it and all of that other stuff. So the wig wasn't the greatest, but it was still better than him like going out and getting like some afro wig or something like that and trying to do the hairstyle.
What about if we take the hair part out of it and we talk about other things that are extremely important to culture? Like with Coco coming out, we've got Dia de los Muertos imagery, we've got all of anime with kimonos being a big part of the character design for a lot of those things. How does that play into this conversation? Because we don't want to culturally appropriate important things to people's culture.
Yeah.
And I want to say, like, the cultural appropriation is when you are, and you mentioned this earlier in definition, but just to kind of reunify it, like, it is when you take things from another culture without the permission from that culture to engage in it and sort of co-author something that you don't really have the right to be co-authoring. So, for example, I think I mentioned I studied abroad in Japan. I've worked there. I was an interpreter for a little bit, and like I've done a bunch of stuff with Japan. So I have a deep love and respect for Japanese culture, but I do not wear my kimono around town just because it's fun to wear. Like I wear it to specific events.
Don't do
this
that.
Is kind of, right, like just why, first of all. And like while not all kimono are considered like sacred cultural garbs, I understand how like my Japanese friends and Japanese Americans and like to a larger extent Asian Americans, because we're really bad about discerning populations here, get treated as a result of culture. So I just don't wear it here to kind of respect that. And even though I know that my intention of wearing kimono isn't to be a jerk, I recognize that how this is sometimes viewed and how sometimes like my friends and families and colleagues and other Asian Americans are treated here. So I just wear it to cultural events that represent Japan. And, and I go to a lot of anime cons, so you always see people wearing, kimono and doing all this and that. And I think if you're cosplaying a specific character with a specific kimono, that's generally seen. And I'm not Japanese, so I'm not the authority on this, but this is just kind of the information I've gathered from speaking with folks. It's fine. But maybe don't make your so-called geisha look. Just avoid all that altogether. Don't like all that stuff on, and wear things in context appropriate times. And then kind of even with like Dia de los Muertos or other cultural holidays that you might not share, wear those in places where you are invited to do so from that culture.
Yeah.
Just avoid it.
Yeah.
Like there's so many things you can cosplay that are culture free or don't have a sacred like meaning or ritual or anything like that, and don't belong to like marginalized groups. Just cosplay that. Like sometimes they're just things that are off limits. We can think things are very beautiful and wonderful, and they're just not something you have access to, and that's okay. We have to be okay with not having access to everything. This is a preschool concept. Like sometimes the pencil that Timmy is using is not your pencil, so just buy your own pencil or get something else. It makes me so angry. Oh, I like it. I like a lot of things that I
like
can't have.
a lot of things.
Yeah,
To
right.
have it.
So here,
Tiffany, I
when
wanted to know,
cosplaying
like,
characters.
sorry.
Sorry. So
No, Monica, let's hear from you.
Go, Monica.
I'm always at a loss for cosplaying characters that are Asian, and to put it in context, I am at a loss whether I should cosplay Moana or Mulan, or if that's appropriate for me, because I'm Asian and I'm a Pacific Islander, technically. But do I even cosplay these characters? Is it even okay for me to cosplay these characters? Because I don't have any Chinese background. I don't have any Maori or Hawaiian background. So should I even attempt to cosplay these characters? Like, that's something up to this day I still try to stay away from, because I just don't know if that's going to be offensive or anything like that. So what are your guys' take on that? So just something that I always like ask about.
I think that does speak to making assumptions about a person's culture a lot and not understanding a person's culture, because I don't think people would look at you as an Asian person and think you shouldn't cosplay as Mulan, but you're not Chinese. And also, people who are from China are not strictly a traditionally looking Chinese person. There are Black people in China. There are white people who live in China. There are Black people who live in Mexico. There are white people who live in Mexico and Asian people who live in Mexico. So people have cultures that don't necessarily reflect what we think of, what we think their culture is supposed to look like. So I don't have an answer for you, but I can say it's an interesting perspective to think it's not all about how we look. There's also a lot more behind that.
Yeah.
I
a lot of people. Yep. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that I think that just goes a lot into, because there's a difference. There's appropriation and there's appreciation, right? And that's what I wanted to ask Tiffany about. It's like, when it is about, you making sure that you appreciate the culture, at being respectful, and asking, if you're invited to an event, is it okay? If I get a chance to do this, can I dress up like this? Or, I've been in situations where, if we had huge Nigerian parties and my partner was obviously not Nigerian, I'd get them an outfit just so they wouldn't feel like they would, standing out and everything, and they felt more comfortable because everyone's, wearing like the same outfits. I know now that, I've been wearing a lot of my traditional wear to like big events. I actually just did a photo shoot, with an outfit that my mom got me from Nigeria too. So I think it's honestly about like, no, Monica, no one's going to go up to you and say you're not Asian enough to be, Mulan or anything. So
I'll fight them.
Yeah,
I know. It's like if they do,
I will fight them. I will make them disappear. Sorry.
Oh no.
Edit that part out, please.
Kind of like what I wanted to bring up, because here's the thing, like a lot of cosplayers say if it's Disney, it's free game, which is not always the case.
It's not.
And I think not a lot of people are aware about that, because, for example, like characters like Tiana, or you really have to be mindful how you cosplay these characters, and just because it's Disney, you know, it doesn't make it right if you, I don't know, some.
Yeah, no, yeah, it doesn't. Well, Disney is also has a very colored
yeah.
history of messing things up.
Yes.
Case in point, Pocahontas. That's very
Oh,
pretty
Lord.
salient, timely example
Yeah.
of things that we shouldn't be cosplay. But kind of to your
Yeah.
point, Monica, I feel like, it's not really an easy answer. I think there is, sometimes you can speak to like diaspora. This is probably larger than we want to get into. But
Yes.
for me personally, I am Black, but I don't necessarily have an ethnic root to tie myself to because of slavery and all that stuff was erased. So we don't really have I suppose a cultural backdrop for which I can like call on like being Nigerian or like West African. I don't have that, so I'm cognizant of that if I'm picking characters. If I look at characters that have prints or designs or aesthetics from those cultures, because even though I am Black, I'm not part of it. And I don't think, well, by and large, I don't think anybody's gonna blink. They don't know when. I think racism sometimes works to your like. I don't want to say advantage, but like sometimes people are just like, oh, it's a Black person, it's probably fine. So I don't think anyone would say anything. But like because of what I believe in terms of cultural appropriation, like I think that sometimes it's important to interrogate. But I also think Moana is based off of a specific, and I'm not Pacific Islander, so again, I'm not speaking with any kind of authority on this matter, but this is just kind of how I'm interpreting it. It's not a real culture, it's just based off of a culture, if I remember the storyline correctly, right? So even though, if you have kind of that Pacific Islander cultural heritage that was drawn on from the movie, or drawn it, kind of used to in the movie, I think it sounds like that would be okay. And I think Mulan, as an example, it's again that Mulan is originally a Chinese folktale that is fiction. It's not real, but like it was a Chinese folktale. But it's not quite the same thing as like Pocahontas, which is like a real person who was
In
horribly treated. Yeah, like it was a really
and they just like
bastardized that story like out
yeah.
the
They just made it a whole other story.
What is this, right? Like so it's a little different of a context than that. So, and again, I'm not Chinese either, so I speak no authority on the topic. But I think sometimes if you have a question about it, then it's okay just to not do it. Just don't worry about it and just go pick something else. But I also think that sometimes it is helpful in interrogating your own identity in a lot of ways. Like I think thinking about cosplay and who I can cosplay as, and I went through this even when I cosplay as the Dora Milaje. I'm not even real, like it's not even a real group of people, but I was like, this is really interesting. I'm thinking more about, being Black, but not necessarily having a cultural root to a specific Black or to a specific culture within the African diaspora. Like, what does that mean if I chose to cosplay somebody else? And so, I think it makes it's an interesting problem, but I feel like, again, if you're just not comfortable with it, cosplay is totally choose your own adventure, so you can avoid it altogether.
I think it's definitely complicated, and like you kind of have to approach each one differently, because it also comes down to like, if it's animated or it's like a movie, there's a costume designer who either was like inspired by a culture. Like, so for example, with Black Panther, yes, it is not a real actual culture. There's no Wakanda.
No, it is. It's Nigeria.
Okay, sorry. There's an actual Wakanda.
It's in Nigeria.
It's in Nigeria.
Is it really?
Yeah.
No.
Don't do that to me. I'm hopeful.
Oh my God.
Wait. I thought I had a good grasp of it. Apparently not.
But she did like, research and pulled inspirations from a lot of different cultures. And like some of Disney's more recent stuff, like Moana, for example, they started tapping a little more closely into the cultural thing. So there's some things that you like when the whole, God, I'm already forgetting. But they put out that costume for kids that had the
oh my God, the Maui costume. Oh my God,
it was like a hot mess. It was like, just don't include the tattoos, you guys. Just don't, or make up some like nonsense tattoos. Don't.
It was so weird.
Yeah, because
that was like a
legit,
really
like Hawaiian. Those are tattoos.
Yeah, they put like
Samoans.
legitimate. That was a bad choice.
Yeah,
like, so I feel like I've seen some people do like solutions to that where they're like they'll just make up their own markings or something, so you're not infringing on an actual culture.
Right.
Don't do that.
Don't do
Same
that.
thing with like someone talking about like some of the markings that were used in Black Panther. we're based on actual culture. So it's like, maybe don't do the markings if you find that out, and just either leave them off or do your own spin on it, or just do like something that looks pretty. But you should research it, because sometimes even makeup trends are based on actual cultural markings. That's been its own like fire recently, about people borrowing people's cultural markings for pretty makeup. But like, so like, very, very fantastical take on that, like not even close. But it's like got actual things like matador costumes and stuff like that. So like, I still was like, well, I'm not in any way from either culture, but I'm gonna focus on the design that literally exists, because then I'm not making anything up. And then one of the changes I was making, the first version was based off of the movie and how it was designed, because it's more cartoony. And then I'm reworking it to kind of match what Matador costumes actually look like, to look more realistic, unrealistic human proportions. But I would look at the real ones. Now, mind you, anyone can hire like someone to make one of those. It's actually like something, it's not like a culturally significant thing. It's more of a job. So it's like making something based off of a uniform. So you have to be careful.
Mariachi?
No, like
Matador?
bullfighters.
Okay.
Yeah, like matadors.
Were you talking about Coco? Because I was thinking you were talking about Coco, which I was thinking Mariachi.
Book of Life.
Okay, I haven't seen
Yeah.
that.
Book of Life,
So
now I understand why I'm
now you get it.
Okay.
Yeah, those are very different things. But yeah, also like if you were to do a mariachi costume, it is a job. Like it's not like a high like important, like it's a job. Anyone could be a mariachi. So it's not, but there was a situation where someone did something from Overwatch, and they decided to take a dance garb that was specific to a culture and then use that for the character design, but it wasn't their culture. And that's kind of where they got into hot water. So it's like, when you decide to come up with creative takes, if it's not your culture, maybe don't use that when you tried to embellish on something. That's where it starts to get into the bad territory. And so it's like, yeah, don't touch it. Like, make sure you research or ask somebody or something. And if it's really something that's like specific and has a deep tie, maybe don't go there. So like, some people are like, oh, can I do makeup from Coco? Can I do characters from Book of Life? Because they do have like sugar skull painting. If you do exactly the design that the character has, it's complicated, but you're still in a safer zone because you're following what was put on a public screen. If you make up your own,
yeah, the Party City. The Party City bags, like don't.
Oh God,
Danger.
Don't be a sugar skull from Party City.
And kind of along with that, I just want to like mention, so, you know, we don't live in a vacuum. So even things that are like culturally insignificant, I'll kind of go back to kimono just for a second. Like yukata, which is like a summer spring kimono, they're not like really, it's not like a sacred garb or anything. It's like almost a casual version of that. Even though it's not like a big deal in Japan, those are things that are often used to be stereotyped here in the United States. So again, like even Japanese people in Japan generally don't care what we do with their stuff here, because they're in Japan and they're the people of power in that country. So they don't really care too much about what's happening here. So if you ask a lot of Japanese people what they feel about, the whole cultural appropriation thing, they're like, oh, whatever. But like here, obviously, Japanese Americans and Japanese people that live here and Asian Americans to a larger extent also get the racism behind it. So even though things that might like not be culturally significant in their host country, they are used as racialized, stereotypical things here. So you have to be cognizant of what's kind of going on in both places, I think, which is part of the appreciation aspect. We need to be aware of what's going on for the whole entirety of the piece. It's not just like, oh, I really want to throw on this really pretty cosplay. Like, I love the way that it looks. You got to like do your due diligence to like make sure you're up on the, what's happening.
Yeah. And we take time to research our cosplays and everything too.
Yep.
So within that time, you can definitely, reach out. Like I've had plenty of times where cosplay friends will send me a message and say, hey, I'm working on this specific cosplay. Is there anything that you think that I should not do? And I am absolutely forthcoming when it's like, well, yeah, please do not, contour with very darker shades. You don't need to do that. You can still do the cosplay without, darkening your skin and everything. And I'm so appreciative of my friends, for taking the time out to actually ask those questions and make sure that they are being as appropriate as possible.
I think that opens up a conversation topic of whitewashing, because we do say that cosplay is for everyone. Anyone can cosplay any character, regardless of your size, your race, whatever. As long as we're not appropriating culture or doing blackface. But then how do we avoid whitewashing? Like, is it possible to avoid whitewashing? Is that just an inevitability that we're going to have to acknowledge when it comes to doing things like that?
This is kind of my thought on it. Sorry, I talk a lot. Abby might be able to speak on this one too, but I've always thought of whitewashing as more of an industry thing. Mm-hmm. It is not so much the day-to-day, like your average cosplayer. It's when you're taking an opportunity that was given to a POC or was cast as a POC or was originally designed as a POC, and then putting a white person in that person's spot.
Yeah.
It's not so much like, your average cosplayer cosplaying as T'Challa. Like, it's not so much that. And this is what I hear from a lot of white cosplayers, is this fear that they're going to be accused of whitewashing, which is somehow, I guess they think, worse than being called the N-word on the internet. It's just like this anxiety about being accused of whitewashing, I think, is oftentimes greater than the actual accusations that happen. First of all, the whitewashing accusations usually happen from other white people that don't know what that means. And two, I think it is, again, kind of a blown up fear of cosplaying as people of color because they don't understand what racism is. Yeah. So generally speaking, I think it's fine to on the day-to-day level, cosplaying as people of color, that's okay. It's not really a big deal, again, as long as you avoid the whole appropriation and race-facing thing. Whitewashing, I think, is a term that should be used more in where you're being paid to do something. So Absolutely. If you're being cast, right or if you're being, used to model or something like that. Mm-hmm. You see this in Disney princess groups. If you're, a white person, skin darkening to be Jasmine or something, that is not only racist, but whitewashing. So the character. So, but that's kind of how I've always looked at it.
Yeah, you literally hit all the nails. Seriously. Yeah, it's honestly, a white actor being paid to take on the role of a minority actor. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's obviously been happening still in the film scene, Oh God.
So many.
So many. There's literally memes going around of what's her face? From
Scarlett Johansson?
Oh, Scarlett Johansson.
Oh my God.
Oh God.
So many. ScarJo as Harriet Tubman.
Oh no!
Had an ongoing joke. That's who we're gonna cosplay. I'm gonna cosplay Scarlett Johansson cosplaying as Harriet Tubman. My next cosplay skit.
Emma Stone was an Asian person I know in one.
Oh yeah. That
one person in that Hawaiian movie. And
yes.
Constantly had to explain herself as the character that she had lineage to Hawaiian culture.
I know. It's
all right, this is the 1 millionth time she had to bring this up in the movie just to.
Yeah, it's they were trying to make sure it was okay.
And I did not get that for the longest time, and then I read them oh, that's why they kept doing that.
If you know you're doing it wrong, then why?
Just don't hire her.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Easy. There's so many other Hawaiian actors that are literally out there.
Exactly.
Maybe in the state of Hawaii.
I know. You guys are there.
It's literally called what? It was called Hawaii or something like
that. Something like that, yeah.
Aloha.
Aloha. Yeah, it's called Aloha.
I don't know.
I didn't actually watch it. It looked like a really bad movie.
Yeah, I didn't see it either. I remember that whole thing.
I know.
But yeah, whitewashing literally goes along with, all of these characters who were specifically made for people of color, and they have been recast, as a vanilla person, and it's hard because the film community is so, it's really hard for people of color to break into the film community. For the longest time, they always had the same POCs playing the same roles,
Yep.
you know, over and over again. And it's like, you realize there's a slew of actors that are out there that you can grab onto.
Not everyone is Michael B. Jordan. There are other black
everyone, right? And he's always a bad guy. That's what kills me too.
Always.
Like, and I love him because he literally went to high school with my brother.
What?
Yes.
How do you have all these connections?
I know,
he went to Arts High School in Newark, New Jersey. And that was the same high school that my brother went to. He's like, you know, I know Michael B. Jordan. I was like, fudge you.
One thing I think about the cultural the whitewashing that's happening in media is it's not just taking jobs away from people of color and Black people. It's also rewriting history in a way. Like, if you watch the Stonewall movie, there's no people of color in that movie, and Stonewall was just people of color. Those were the people who started or who were involved in that event. Same thing with, I just learned that disco was primarily queer and it was primarily Black, and then Saturday Night Fever came out, and then all of a sudden everybody thought it was people who looked like John Travolta. And whitewashing is not just taking jobs away, it's also changing how people think about very significant cultural moments.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Especially if you're not a part of that, that's the only exposure you get.
Especially in like the smallest ways. There's so many movies, like there was like a list I saw once where it was like all these movies based on a true story where they've like massively whitewashed it, and it was like, I think one was just like called 21, where it was a bunch of kids who did like conned like a casino card counting, and then it turned out, I learned later that the main kid was Asian, who was like the main starring character, and like the main role is a white guy, and I was like, what? He got robbed. Like, so many, and it's just like a little tiny thing, but there's so many movies like that where they're like, that person was a Black person, but we just put like, I don't know, Nicolas Cage, get in there.
Nicolas Cage is playing everybody.
Yeah, everybody's Nicolas Cage in this movie, but it's just like little things like that. People get affected by like how they think history went, which is why I cannot stand The Greatest Showman. But that's another story.
Wait, no, we have to talk about that then on another time, because I need to know about that.
Another time.
Okay.
After we're done.
Well, and I get when you're telling a story in a movie for narrative purposes or time constraints, you sometimes can't have as many players in the story as there really was there, but it always seems to be the people of color that are removed from that story, as opposed to Joe Schmo in his khakis.
That's what, like, I don't understand why so many people were so angry about Hamilton. You know, it's like, I get it, but it's like a play on what happened in U.S. history. It doesn't necessarily mean that's everything that happened, you know, because there are aspects of Hamilton that have absolutely been blotted out. You know, some people were saying that Hamilton was actually queer, you know, and had a very close relationship with some of the friends that he was with and everything. But it's like people crap on it so much because it's only people of color in there and and I was like, can you just let it just one show? It's literally one show where you guys have an entire freaking history of decades, you know, of doing this. Like, I'm still trying to understand. I really
they don't like it when it's flipped back on them. They're like, oh wait, this is what we've been dealing with since like the beginning of the industry. So
I'm the center of attention.
You'll be fine. We take like one play. You'll survive, I promise.
One thing I wanted to mention was just that, you know, we can all point at instances where it's offensive. We can all say, ooh, that's blackface, that's bad. Don't do that. But there are places where it's not as cut and dry. And that can be harder to navigate when it's not, you know, using shoe polish on your face. So let's just touch on that a little bit, particularly tanning. I think that is something that can come.
Oh, sorry, I'll set up. I talk a lot. I'm sorry.
Okay, so if anybody other than Tiffany wants to contribute to that part of the conversation, jump in. If not, Tiffany.
So,
please.
Pop out for a moment. Just go for it.
Blackface or brownface, race facing, is the act of darkening your skin regardless of how dark it is. It does not matter if you go 2 shades darker, 1 shade darker, or if you put on the shoe polish. it is still blackface if you are trying to mimic the real look of a real existing race. Like there's no, I was like, well, I just tanned a little bit. I actually did a poll because this is maybe a cultural thing for me. I have no idea. I had no idea why people tan. I don't get it. It does not make sense to me. I'm not really an outdoorsy person, so I don't get wanting to be out in the sun. So I did like a poll of asking like my white friends, like, why do you even try? What is the point? And so they had all these like really interesting reasons that were, you know, not just trying to look dark. Like I guess it shows muscle definition, or there's a vitamin thing. I don't know. Anyway, there was a lot of really interesting for wanting
Or
to tan.
skin cancer.
Well, like being out in the sun,
even think
it's warm. I don't know. It's like good for mental health, I guess. I don't know. So that's
As a
what they were
person who
saying.
goes from very white to pink to bright red, I don't get it either.
I'm like,
Damn
hey,
it.
whatever. This
Skip
world is
it.
hard. If being out in the sun makes you happy, then fine. You know, that's not an issue. It is
Yeah.
specifically if you're tanning to look like a specific group, of, like a real lived racial experience. So I've answered this question probably 500 times like the past year. Like, well, what if I went out to the beach and then I had a plan to be Storm and I'm a white cosplayer and I got darker? It's not blackface. If you are just out living your life and you get tan or you go tanning and then you just suddenly like, oh, I forgot I'm wearing my Storm cosplay this weekend, so I put it on. I'm darker than I am in my other pictures.
Mm-hmm.
That's not blackface. It is when you are specifically doing it to mimic the lived race of another person. Obviously, the court of public opinion is different. No one's going to know what your weekend plans were, so they're not going to know that you were like out at the beach and just got tan. So be prepared to have that conversation. I think that's another kind of thing. You're going to have to be prepared to have the conversation.
Yeah, you have to be prepared.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's not cut and dry. People don't have the entire story from looking at a picture. So it's just something you have to deal with. So it's only if you're doing it to mimic people of color. It is not honoring us. We do not like it. It does not look good.
At all.
I don't know why people they just don't know how black skin functions. How many people have you seen that are blackface and then also color their palms? They're like, what are you doing? This is not how black people look. But anyway, sorry, my whole spiel is just like, it is only if you've nothing going around about that for days, but like truly, only if you're darkening your skin to look like real lived people, then it's blackface. Full stop. No argument. There's no debate. There's no gray area. That is what it is.
Basically, if you can take it off after you do that cosplay and then do another cosplay that same day or even like 2 days later and look paler, no. That's just no.
Don't do it for the intent of
there should not be I mean, like you were saying, like you go out and you ended up tanning because you were outside, whatever, or you like your summer tan skin and you do that just because you normally do it. That's fine. But if you did it just for that costume, that's where it's not okay, because now it's really no different than putting the makeup on. It's just slightly little longer lasting, but you did it just for that. That's not okay. Now, one thing I do know is POCs also tan, and some are pale. And I do have friends, I mean, I tan a tiny bit, but not like crazy drastic. And it has come up like, what if I've tanned and I have two different foundations, or one part of me tanned and another part of me didn't tan? That's a whole, it happens. It's a whole other, like one of my cosplay partners, she's Native American, and she showed me this picture. She was like, here's my leg and here's my stomach, and there are two other colors.
It's my life too. Same.
We were about to do more exposed. She was like, I have to fix this. I can't look too colored. So that is different. That is you matching what's already you. That's not you changing something else. Like, it's okay to be making sure that your skin looks even if that's what you want. But
the struggle, yeah.
Yeah. But if you have a paler foundation that you don't use times of the year and putting that on, or the reverse, like your darker foundation you put on in winter, that's not okay. If you're doing that, you know what you're doing now. Like, come on. If you know it's not what you look like underneath, don't be doing it.
Just a little bit. It's a little too much.
No.
And then I do think about like Jack Sparrow cosplayers where he's tan because he's out on a ship all the time. And it's like, if you are a white person and you want to look like a very tan white person, then okay, you want to look like a tan white person, but you're not looking like a different race.
Exactly. I truly don't worry about what other white people are doing with other white people.
Yeah.
Not my problem.
I will never worry about what other white people are doing about other white people.
That sounds worse than I mean it, but like truly,
No,
right?
It's not.
You've got
It's
enough
not.
to worry about.
That's another white person as another white person that just happens to be hardy and like rugged.
Yeah.
And like another thing that used to be a big deal, it's coming back, which I don't understand, is like taping your eyes to look more
Asian.
Why?
And I think it's the fox eye look, you know.
Fox eye.
And it's like, what is wrong with you? Like this is some Mickey Rooney, like you know, nonsense.
The thing is foxes don't even look like that.
Yeah.
Like, have you seen a fox? Like, they don't even look like that.
That's not what a fox looks like. Like that's
What are you doing? What is wrong with you?
What fox? Like what are you doing? It's like, it's so funny seeing like things you think would have died out come back into rotation.
Yeah.
And just like, oh, I just put a little tape. Girl, you were cosplaying as Sailor Moon. What part of her eye even looks like? Like, not only is it racist, but what are you trying to accurately represent here? Like, what are you doing? That is not. If you watched anime, nobody's eyes look like that. It's certainly not going to get that with tape. So it's just like people find new and inventive ways of being racist, I guess.
Well, I also see people accused of doing blackface when they're doing like Shadow Link or Peter Pan's shadow. And
God.
It's like, you do realize that the word blackface doesn't literally mean the color black, right? Like,
Hence the tanning, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I see them doing like dark elves too.
Yeah.
You know? Like.
So like the
think
drow character.
Yeah, dark elves. Yeah.
I think you have to be careful because even, I mean, I don't know, maybe if you guys are going to a con and you just happen to see something out of the corner of your eye, you're like, what is that? Because we still see people doing blackface. Like, I have the cognitive ability to be like, oh, that's just a dark link, we're fine and move on.
Yeah.
I think you could be safe. Again, poor public opinion, right? So I think you could be safe by like add some blue highlights or like, you know, put some contour on there. So like, it's not like that person's cosplaying as a racial like, caricature, because it still happens. But like, you know, just as a safety measure for yourself, like just put a little, you know, contour in there and like maybe add some shimmer so that people know you're not trying to be a real person. But recognize like knee jerk still happens. I'm going to prioritize safety over accuracy, I guess, sometimes. So I'm like, well, you know, this person's probably not in blackface, but you know, it takes like a couple extra seconds to realize, okay, this is what's happening. It's not like, you know, there are characters out there that you should not cosplay that are like totally black. I'm gonna say Mr. Popo from Dragon Ball Z.
Yes, Mr. Popo.
Oh,
Mr. Popo.
You remember? They finally made him blue because they're like, oh.
I remember seeing a Mr. Popo cosplay and I was like, ooh, no, ooh, baby, no.
Don't do it. That is based off of a caricature.
I was like, don't do Mr. Popo.
India. Yeah, it's not. That was the intention from the art style. It is blackface. It is bad. Same thing with Jinx from Pokemon. I had somebody walk out of the panel on me on this one. Actually, it was pretty funny because she disagreed. But I'm like, the facts are there. I can't. You can be mad at facts if you want. But
well, I mean, even if you look at original Black Panther, like the character designs for M'Baku was bad. Like, don't do original M'Baku.
Don't go there.
Don't do it.
And also, anything Man from the High Castle really squicks me out.
I was in that show.
You were?
Oh.
If you watch the very first episode, you'll see me on the bus.
Really?
Right behind Alexa Davalos. Yeah. We actually ended up being friends after that because she grew up in England too.
Oh my God. Abby, you were like a spider web.
I know,
It seems like every 2 sentences, I also did that. I know that person. Like, who are you? You're some kind of mythical being.
I think you're like every new friend I get on Facebook when I'm like, sure, add friend, and then I'm like, how are we co-friends with this person?
Yeah.
They don't. Like, I work with somebody who's also friends with someone from high school, and I'm like, what? How is this
if you
real
watch
life?
the very first episode, you'll see me. No makeup.
Awesome.
I'm in a hat, and it doesn't look like me. And it's so funny because people will be like, I was watching this show, and I swear to God, I saw someone that looked like you. And I was like, why? Do you think all black people look alike? And they were like, no, that's not what I was trying to say. And I was like, no, I'm joking. It wasn't. But yeah, that show was hard. That show was really hard.
Yeah,
we were there when they were throwing away the swastika signals, armbands, because they were originally supposed to have that on the uniforms. But people were just like,
nope. They're like,
Yeah,
Not a good idea.
and I've seen people defend it, being like, it's a really great recreation of that costume. And I'm like, I am uncomfortable. I don't.
Like, do you think people want to really see you walking around with that? Do you want to be the bad guy today? Like,
Didn't
No,
that happen
who's
at
like,
Rose City Comic Con? There was a
yes,
guy
it did.
walking around in a Nazi uniform.
Yep.
Man from High Castle, and then somebody did a Nazi uniform but replaced all the swastikas with
Yeah.
Hello Kitty faces.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And it was
That's a choice, I guess.
That's a
Yeah,
and it was
choice.
and
I
they're
was
like,
like-
no, it's mocking them. And I'm like, I still feel real
It's
uncomfortable.
a little weird, buddy.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, that show was hard. It was really, really hard. But you know, they did their final season, I think, last year. I think. The book is literally 14 pages long, so I'm not even sure
what?
how they got that many
Oh my God.
seasons out of that tiny ass.
I did not know it was
that
that
tiny little book. Yeah, the book is literally like that long. It's
My
it's
God.
horrible. But the premises of the show was cool, right? It was
Yeah.
this timeline that happened, but it wasn't a real timeline, and it was people fighting to make the real timeline come back, right? Instead of this alternate universe kind of thing where Germany took over America and Japan. And then so now everyone from Japan was a Nazi.
Well, and I mean, we were looking at things like that. Like, I'll go and see a stage production of Sound of Music, and there are people dressed as Nazis
tearing up
there, and you're like, there we
flags.
go. We've got this. This is part of this story. But I don't want to see somebody walking around as Rolf at a con.
convention, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, think of your time and space. And I have questions about sometimes people recreating things. I think a lot of people use it's historical accuracy in recreating certain things when they could just avoid it, just so they could have that shock tactic. And like, oh, they're just using the excuse that it's historically accurate. But yeah, nobody wants to see your Nazi uniform at a con. You're just doing it so you can get the attention. Like, no one was, it's not. We know exactly what you're trying to do, and it's
But
ridiculous.
it's like, why do it though? Honestly, people are gonna be pissed off. I mean, regardless of if they're even shocked, like people are gonna be pissed off.
Yeah. No one's going to be happy about it. So
No one's like that.
No one's like, oh boy.
Cosplayer. Nobody says that.
I'm doing it because I have an appreciation. Oh, so you have an appreciation of being a Nazi?
I know.
Right.
Like, what does that mean?
You think I'm looking at your Nazi uniform and be like, those seams are so straight. No, I'm like, oh, Nazi. God. Well, I'm just pretending. Look, I'm not, again, I would rather prioritize safety than accuracy. I'm not going to worry whether or not you're a real Nazi. But if you have the time and energy and effort to spend the money on a costume like this, is good enough for me. I think you're a Nazi.
Oh god.
Oh my
Anyway,
God.
So we're almost coming up to the end of our outline with a question that a lot of people have, which is, can white folks cosplay Black and people of color characters? And I know the answer is yes. ... But.
Yes, with
So let's
caveat.
talk about what happens after that ... Monica, do you want to tackle that? You put your name on it, or I put my name on it for you. So.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm kind of on a loss for words with that. It's because this whole conversation changes what I used to know and what I'm knowing. Because a lot of the times, just like what we were discussing earlier, it's okay to cosplay whatever character as long as you don't change the color of your skin intentionally to accurately match that character. There is always a line that you need to draw when it comes to darkening your skin and whatnot. Just don't ever do that. Don't ever use wigs that would mimic Black culture. But yeah, it's just, I know I'm part of this panel, but it's really opening my eyes on a lot of these issues, and I thank you ladies for that, because there's still so much I need to learn about it, and I know that man, I'm just at a loss for words. It is so hard. Like people just assume that they know what's appropriate and what's not. but until they actually experience what people, POC cosplayers are going through, donning that cosplay or whatever, it's just not the same experience. So yeah.
Any other people want to chime in?
I never have an issue with people. I mean, I've seen like some amazing white storm cosplays, like absolutely beautiful. And I never really have an issue with people showing appreciation, for certain characters. It's just when you take it to the next level, and you're trying to obviously either tan or my poor soul, makeup. It's just I can't. Like I've had so many fights with international cosplayers, just so many fights. It's just it's if on top of the fact that like if you are trying to be an international cosplayer and show your cosplays in other countries, you have to be cognizant of what those countries are dealing with and what they're going through. Just like it was said earlier, especially with Japan and everything, you have to be cognizant of the culture and their feelings of it. And ask questions. It is not hard for you to ask a question. It's literally a 10-second question. Sometimes it could be a little bit, more of a conversation because you haven't talked to a friend in a while, and you guys talk about, what is seen as appropriate and is not, especially because that opinion can possibly be voiced by so many other people, that you probably don't have access to.
Yeah.
It's so funny, like for the longest time with this wig, I mean, the main reason why I wore this wig is because a lot of people thought this was my hair. And I was like, no, my hair is actually blonde underneath. And people were like, your hair's not blonde. And I'm like, no, actually it is. See? Blonde. And they're like, the hell? Like, do I need to whip my wig off? Because, I used to do that when I was younger. So, but, it's literally like people can be anything that they want to. Just don't feel like you can't go through the struggles and the racism and the stereotypes and the hatred, that person goes through in a normal everyday life for them. It's not okay. It will never be okay. Just think of it as a situation of if I wore this costume in, a supermarket, would you be okay with doing that? Would you be okay with people staring at you, really strangely if they thought you were a different skin tone, clutching their purses, clutching their pearls, locking their door, because that's literally what we have to deal with all the time, even from, the tender age of young.
Day one.
1, 2, 3.
So if, let's say somebody follows all of this advice, they do their research, they don't darken their skin tone, they're cognizant of the culture that they're being inspired for their costume from, and they're still accused of blackface, or they're still accused of cultural representation.
Welcome to the club. I don't know. I guess it happens regardless. Like, this is just social media, the nature of social media. People are going to be jerks and people are going to get it wrong. And like, I don't know. Personally, I just don't have the energy to like deal with other people that are going to cause drama on the internet. Like, people are just going to do it. Yeah. I think what you can do to save yourself from backlash if you responding incorrectly to an inaccurate accusation, because I think that's a thing too. Somebody accuses you of something, there's ways of gracefully handling it, is to acknowledge why somebody might think that this was wrong. Like, okay, I can see, let's say, for example, you're white cosplayer cosplaying a storm. And somebody's like, you're whitewashing, or you're darker in this picture than the other one. You can say, I understand the history of blackface, I get that, and skin darkening, and I think it's really wrong and problematic. This is what happened. I went to the beach last weekend, and I just so happened to be in this skin tone. That's why I'm darker than my other pictures. This just happens because I tan.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So just acknowledge why it's an issue rather than just immediately launching into, this is cancel culture. You guys are so wrong and vilified. It's just like, just don't make it about, I guess, I know no one likes to be attacked, but you know why it's happening. Either they're trolling or they really are concerned. Obviously, if they're trolls, don't worry about it. The people that are concerned probably have a reason to be concerned about it. So just address it, with the knowledge base and move on, keep it pushing. But like, you know, social media is social media. You can do everything right and people are still going to have an issue with it. I don't think that should be your mantra. Sometimes people you are doing something problematic and should be called on it. But, you know, when those things do happen, I think you got to just gracefully, you know, acknowledge it. And I guess I have a harder time feeling, I shouldn't say sympathetic because it is bad, but, you know, I'm just like, okay, I'm over here being called the N-word and you're being accused of race facing. A little bit of a difference here in importance. But, you know, I think people generally, there are ways of handling it to not be, you know, get yourself dragged in the process.
Yeah.
Also, you know, no one person speaks for everyone else. Yeah. So you could talk to your friend and say, is this okay? Like, I'm trying my best to be respectful. Is this okay? And your friend is like, great. That doesn't mean that the next person you come across is going to react the same way.
Yeah. But it's the fact that you've taken the time out, you know, you've done your research, and that's what I appreciate the most, you know, is those people who are actually thinking and researching, like, oh, I'm going to do this. Wait, hold on.
Maybe
you know, and if it is a situation where you don't feel that that it'll be done without you darkening your face, then don't freaking do it.
Yeah.
Period. Don't do the cosplay. Find something else. There's so many other things that are out there for you to play with. New shows are always coming out every single time. So
many options.
Animes are always coming out. You have options.
I think if we're gonna, I think it's important to ask populations that you have questions about directly, rather than just like posting random things in like random groups. This is like one of my biggest pet peeves about this is that, you know, somebody will ask, well, hey, can I wear like a Native American headdress or indigenous headdress? And they'll post it in a group full of just like white people and never even say, I'm asking people from this particular culture about it. And I think it's important to, you know, part of the honoring or part of the respecting is to be intentional about who you're asking. Don't just ask random, you know, whoever on the internet, which is why the comment section always sets me off, because there's always like that 5 or 6 people that are always like, oh, it's fine. You can do whatever you want. You cosplays for everyone. Yeah, like no one's going to do anything. They're just haters. And I'm just like, you don't have any idea of what you're talking about. Even if the answer is you can do it, it's still important to be, you know, cognizant of the populations that give them the authority back, since it was already taken.
And don't just go to that one yes friend who's like, oh, yeah, don't do it. You fine. Like, and then they like bring that one person up. Well, my one friend said, I'm like,
right. The part of me wants to be like, you all probably know one Black person who will let you call them the N-word. Do it. Do it right now. Do it right now. Like,
just don't.
Don't do it.
I gave you permission. Let's go.
Seriously. It was like, oh, was that person a unicorn? Because I think you made that stuff up. Seriously.
Right. You know, I mean, I do know one guy who would I do know one guy.
We need to talk about this person.
I got some stories. They are no longer, well, they're in the shadow realm now. But anyway, it's just some people, but you know. Anyway, sorry, that's all I wanted to add. It's like, ask people from those populations. Don't just ask your one person. And then, you know, when you're asking people to help you with, you know, navigating stuff, it's an incredible amount of emotional energy, which is kind of why I stopped doing it as much outside of like paneling and like things I agree with you, because it is exhausting explaining your humanity to people. Like, it's just like, there's nothing more soul crushing than having to explain, hey, I'm a human and I have a right to exist. And so these conversations are very laborious. And I think it's important to be cognizant of that, not just ask the one POC friend you have to like fact check all your stuff. There are people out there that will do it. And, you know, it'd be nice, look them a little money once in a while. Here's $15. Do you mind helping me work through this? I have a price chart.
That's exactly the reason why I do sensitivity reading. You know, I was doing it for free for so long, you know, and I'd have people say, hey, I'm trying to write this character and I'm not the color of the character. And I was like, yeah, sure, it's $500 and I'll read your entire story. And you know, and that's what it is. It's sensitivity reading. You know, and it's a market where we can actually finally get paid for all of the bullshit that we had to deal with, you know, for the longest time. And, you know, I've got like literally 2 projects that I'm working on right now that is, you know, making sure that, you know, the person is not trying to be as racist as possible. Because stereotypes happen, you know, and it happens a lot. And the reason I feel that a lot of people have a certain energy, you know, towards
I'm sorry, Shady.
You're totally fine. The reason why people have a certain energy to certain people is because they've seen them portrayed in such a negative light for so long.
Exactly.
You know, and that's one of the reasons why I made my production company, is so that we can finally start making stories that are not like that, you know, that actually show, you know, true portrayals of people of color, you know, and anytime I want to write a story about somebody else, I make sure that I bring in a friend, you know, to write those parts, to write those things that they would feel that person would say. So I mean, it just makes sense. There's so many different people that are out there that are in the same field as you. Why not have those open and honest conversations, so you're not building most of your ideals off of stereotypes that you see on TV?
Yeah.
Well, if people don't understand what you all mean when you say emotional energy or mental energy to give to something like this, think of that friend that texts you and you think in your head, oh jeez, I gotta respond. like that's a tiny little taste of what you were talking about. But we all have that person where you're just like, I don't want to deal with this right now.
Yeah.
It's like it's that on top of living your like regular day-to-day life. Like you see people that are your skin folks getting murdered, killed, abused, and all of these things all the time. And then you have somebody that hops in your inbox and is like, hey, can I cosplay as Black Panther? You know, like it's just like and one more thing on your day. And I don't mind answering I don't mind answering it, but just understand that it does take a lot of emotional energy. And I do think that, you're going to ask the hard, you know, level 2-3 questions that you should send some money to the people that are going to answer them for you. It's pay us for our time and our labor.
Yep.
It's hard. And, you know, and it took me a bit of time to like realize it. I was like, why am I just so exhausted all the time? Like mad. I just don't want to like, you know, and it's because I kept just fighting on the internet and like really breaking down so many things for people all the time. So now I've just stopped doing it as much, and I do it at cons or like at panels or things that like, you know, I volunteer to do, rather than just like open-endedly giving out that much energy. And it really does suck the life out of you. You're just like, my God, this person doesn't see me as a human being. I have to explain that to them. And so it's rough. And like on top of trying to live your day-to-day life, you have to deal with it in cosplay too, which is supposed to be like a fun, you know, like activity.
Yeah. That's why I love doing the diversity panels. Like we do a lot of diversity panels of representation, you know, whether it's in media or cosplay or whatever, at different conventions. And it's nice because there's like 6 of us talking about this stuff, instead of it all just being one person, you know, trying to take on the weight of you know, the world, and trying to explain to you why certain things are not okay. You know, it's literally divvied up between multiple people. You know, they're answering multiple questions on, you know, some very stupid ones too, but you know, it's literally them taking the time out. First of all, they're literally mentally preparing for this hour, this 50 minutes of, you know, having to leave themselves open, right? They're literally leaving themselves open to have these conversations, because it is mentally, it's so much. It is so much, because it pulls from being empathic. You know, a lot of people of color are empathic because they've had to have so many raw emotions that they've dealt with for so many long periods of time, that they're constantly dealing with their own emotions and trying to figure out a way of how to deal with it. You know, again, we're not allowed to have mental conditions, you know, or just not allowed to be public about having mental conditions. And so, you know, it was definitely a stigma for men of color too, for the longest time. You weren't allowed to be emotional because that's considered weak. Yeah. Well, being a human is being emotional. So, but yeah, it literally, it's a huge mental stability game when you're constantly leaving yourself open to answer questions like that over and over again. And I know that there are some people that are willing to do it. I, for the longest time, was willing to do it. But, you know, since the protests happened, I just, because it was constant, right? It's like, well, you're my Black friend, so let me ask you these questions. And it was constant because this movement was happening. And I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm so tired. And it's like, I understood finally why some of my other cosplay friends were like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to explain to them. There's Google. They can use Google to do that. You know, it is a thing. They can use Yahoo, if Yahoo even exists. You know, they have all of these different search engines that they can go to say, is blackfacing wrong?
There's so many articles written by so many people, right? Like there's so much information already out there. And I think panels like this are good because we can answer some of the nuanced questions that might not be as easy. And I always think it's good to talk to the populations affected, but the base work you can do on your own. Self-work is very important. I do it for populations that I don't belong to all the time. It's just called being a good, this is what allyship is. It's not a static thing where you just like are suddenly an ally. It's not a status. It is a constant thing that you have to keep doing, keep learning, and keep working towards. And again, it's not something that you could really give yourself. Like it's something the populations you're trying to be an ally to will give you or identify you as, and that can be taken away in an instant. It's not like something you get to keep. It's not a badge of honor. It is just basic human decency. So like, I don't give out diversity cookies for people doing the bare minimum of like, you know, diversity, equity, and inclusion kinds of stuff. Like you got to really be doing the work, and either you want to do it or you don't. And I think this, you know, this cosplay, it's in the industry, it's in, you know, even if you're a showrunner, like I'm a showrunner for a couple of shows as well. And, you know, we work towards making rules that are very inclusive. So that way people understand that we take it very seriously. It's not just like a badge of honor to be inclusive. It's something that we're very passionate about and want to make our whole like convention body feel included and welcome. And it starts at the baseline of just acknowledging, but also continuing to like look at rules and look at regulations and policies and procedures to make sure you're doing what you need to be doing.
Absolutely.
To jump in what you said about being an ally is something that it's an activity. It's not ally, check, that's done. It's something that you are always doing. One thing that I think a lot of people forget is that, you know, nobody's perfect. Nobody's a perfect ally, but also no one owes you forgiveness. So if you mess up, you can wear that ally hat and you can say, I am doing great. I am supporting the people. If you mess up, that allyship can be taken away. If you apologize, even sincerely, there's no rule that says people have to accept that. You can just be like, no, you messed up. It was really bad. And that's it. So also be aware that as your job as an ally is not to make people forgive you or not to make people accept you. And you have to take that. You have to just live with it. You live with your choices. There are consequences for your choices. Sometimes they're great consequences. You make cool friends. You have cool conversations like this. Other times it's not.
You end up getting dragged. I gotta say, hell hath no fury. Like the POC cosplay community scorned. I've seen people get lit up. Remember the Leon? I'm gonna say I don't care. Leon Shiro thing from a couple years ago.
Yes, that was who I was arguing with.
Yeah. Was that you?
Yes, that was me.
we should talk. But like, he is like literally the scum of the earth, and like the whole. Oh, that was such a bad. So many people got canceled over that whole thing, and he got his not sponsorship. He was a cosplay senpai at not senpai, but
he was supposed to be at New York Comic Con. I got in touch with those people, and I was like, "Listen, this needs to happen."
Did you get him canceled? That was like legendary.
I contacted my friends at UA Sports, and I was like, "Look, you guys need to take care of this," and they were like, "Oh my God, we're so sorry." Yep, UA was like,
that was legendary. No. That's my favorite example. Dang. I didn't know. Yes, Abby. I don't think you're of this earth. You're not a human being. You're like some kind of mythical goddess.
Magic, like literally. Oh my God.
I was like, no. I was literally like, that's the reason why I'm in this exposing racism group.
So I do have to just jump in.
Lost their jobs.
When we were putting together this panel, Tiffany. How did I not say that word normally? Tiffany and I were talking about who we should invite. And the first person I suggested was Abby. I was like, I think Abby would be really great. And she's like, I don't know her, but okay.
Because we had mutuals that I was like, I'm good.
No, I'm like, ooh, I'm a friend matchmaker. Look at that. Okay, so then I like to end all of my my panels on a question that I think is fun and funny, or something to just, yeah, this is a heavy topic. So I want to know what's the dumbest thing that you've ever been asked or someone has assumed about you based on your race and culture. And I will start. I don't put raisins in my potato salad. Like,
Are you sure? No kidding.
I actually make very good potato salad. It's delicious. I don't know why that started. I've eaten a lot of potato salad made by a lot of white people. Raisins have never been a part of it.
Come to the Midwest.
Really? Is that?
No, this is like, just a common joke in like the POC community of white people putting raisins in things that don't need raisins. I think I saw a recipe for jerk chicken once online that had raisins in it. And I'm just like, it's a joke about like white people.
I mean,
I've seen raisins in so many random things. They're like, why are you putting raisins in this? Like, what? I've seen it in macaroni and cheese.
Yeah, I've seen people put blueberries in macaroni and cheese.
Like, for what? Who does this help?
Yeah.
Well, and,
So
I've
funny.
eaten tuna casserole. I know some white recipes are real bad. I know that. But I make great potato salad. It's actually really good. So I can bring it to the potluck and it'll be fine.
We actually made a script about that. Her name is Karen.
Okay, Karen. Yes.
I think Deborah
She
is another
puts
good one.
raisins in potato salad. Please watch Black Jeopardy.
Yes.
with the T'Challa episode.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, Abby, what about you?
This is gonna be really funny, and I'm pretty sure everyone has heard of it, but no, I do not know anyone in my family that has been a part of the Prince Nigerian email scams.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Oh my God.
People
don't.
assume that?
Yeah, as soon as they hear the word Nigeria, it's like, oh, okay, so your cousin like emailed me, and I'm like, what?
Oh my God.
Yeah, I've literally had someone say that to me
Oh
before.
my God.
Mind you, I am actually a princess, but like a legit like daughter of the chief of his tribe.
Abby, I cannot with you anymore. That is amazing.
Arranged marriages have happened. My mom has tried to arrange my marriage multiple times.
Oh my gosh.
Who? Abby's not a real person. That is incredible.
Wow.
I just want to listen to you
trying to
talk
get
for like
away.
hours. Just tell me your whole life.
No.
I've been trying to get away from that family. That's why I do all the things that I do. And Africans have to have like 6 jobs, right? So, but no, seriously, I've literally have had people ask if my cousin has emailed them or anything like that because Nigerian email scams, which I'm going to disprove that right now because those scams are not coming from Nigeria. They are coming from Turkey.
And actually, that scam has been around for a long time. It's a well-established scam. I think it was from like the French Revolution or something. Where that started.
Our internet is not that good. When you go to Nigeria, the internet is not that great. So random people trying to email you, that's not true. Horrible internet. It's not high speed. Most of it is dial-up. So no one's going to spend the time to write a bajillion letter email to try and get money from you. Stop it.
Okay, what about you, Tiffany?
I have so many dumb stories. Let's see. Okay, I'll pick this one. So it's not really a secret that I'm not really a nature person. I like the idea, but I don't like the execution. I do not like bugs. Really don't like bugs. I really hate
Same.
like, terrified. Like literally, I will take on like a murder before I would even go 2 feet near a cockroach. I hate bugs. So one time I was telling a friend, I was like, my dream house is to live in like a plateau that's like just above kind of like where you can breathe because there won't be any bugs, in a plastic house with astroturf. And I'll just come down and visit people and then go back up. And it was like it's been my running joke for my dream house for a long time. And I said, I really don't get the point of yards. And so another person chimed in and says, you know what? I agree. That's just like a symbol of white oppression. And we just don't need to have yards. Like, that's just a white person thing. I just don't understand, like, this is such an oppressive thing to expect people of color to have yards and like all this other stuff. And I'm just like, I just said I wanted AstroTurf because I don't like bugs. I don't get the point of it. My dad takes great pride in his yard. He loves his yard, and that is not a white thing to want a yard. I'm just
It is not.
like, I was like related. So like funny. This other person told me like, kind of, it's related. So she was like, I said, she's like, well, what are you gonna do to like recharge this weekend? I said, I don't know. I'm probably gonna like clean my house, play some video games. And she's like, you should go outside. And I was like, I'm not really outdoorsy. And she says, no, it's historical trauma because slaves used to be outside. And then like that's just historical. And in the Black community, like your parents and family probably told you that it's just bad to be outside and like out in the wilderness because we used to have to pick cotton. This woman, I was like, no, I just don't like bugs. Like, I just like, it was pretty funny.
Oh my God.
I just looked at her like,
hilarious.
No, just not a nature person.
Oh my God. Someone needs to make a film about that, the things that people say to talk to you about your oppression.
Right. I was like, tell me more. I didn't know that.
Hi. Monica, how about you?
Oh, I have so many just because. The two that I think are like really funny. So when I named my website Geeks A Go Go, a lot of people have come up to me and thought it was a not necessarily a porn site, but like and I'm like, do you know a go-go is like an adage for like all sorts or like all things?
Oh my God.
And just because I named it Geeks A Go Go, not like a burlesque or not that I find anything wrong with burlesque. I love burlesque.
Yeah, but
but it's not. It's like, you Google the name or like the word a go go. It completely is a different, like a whole other thing. And the reason why, and this is kind of sad. A lot of Filipino overseas workers, like some of them end up being nurses and some of them end up being nannies. And then the other spectrum is some of them end up being sex workers. And these people were exposed to that. And I don't find anything wrong with sex workers. But it's just like a general assumption that they've taken from their own experience. And we don't all have the same background. We don't all have the same experiences. The second one that really takes the cake is like, I was hanging out and this guy approached me and he was like, oh, so you're from the Philippines? I'm like, yes, I am. And he goes like, so do you like jungle music?
What?
What?
Did you not drop kick him?
Do you like jungle music? And I'm like, what does that mean?
What does that even mean?
What?
What? Yeah, I'm gonna fight this person.
It was the oddest thing that asked me, and I've told my husband this. So I've married this white guy. My husband is white, and every time I bring that up, he always jokes about it now. He's like, so you like jungle music?
What is
I do think if we...
I don't know. I'm like, why? Why would you associate that? It doesn't make any sense. Like, we're a tropical island.
Oh my God.
I grew up by the beach my entire life. I don't get this.
People are so awful.
I kind of wish I had a screenshot of when you finished that sentence and all of our reactions were the same. We were all like,
what?
It was like almost simultaneous. Where we all had the same look on our face.
Like everyone was just like, what? But yeah, like, do you like jungle music? And I'm like,
excuse me?
What's that?
What does that mean?
That's like my mom saying, because like I was married to an Italian before, and I told her he was taking me camping, and she's like, make sure he did not put out an insurance policy on you, because you know
Oh
what
my
they do,
God.
right? They take you to the mountains and then they try to kill you and they come back and they try to collect the insurance. And I'm like, Mom, you need to stop watching 60 Minutes. Seriously.
I
'Cause
now love your mom.
Your mom is the best. Oh my God.
That's amazing.
It's so horrible, seriously.
Right.
But so many people want to meet
Take
her, and
out
I just don't
insurance.
understand why.
That is one of the reasons. That is
That's
amazing.
why.
Oh my God.
There's so many other things that I could talk about her saying that are not appropriate for this at all. But yeah, it's just the ridiculous things that you hear.
Okay, so Jamila, finish it up. What
Okay.
is your?
The first one's like kind of fun. I think it's just like an interesting litmus test. So my cosplay name is Black Betty Cosplay. All right. So some people are really weird about the first part.
Do they call you
Like, so
African American Betty Cosplay?
Some people will look at me and be like, "Is it black?" I'm like, "You can say black. It's a color. Like, come on."
I hope there's like African American.
I have not gotten there yet, but I will die the day that
Next time I
happens. I'll
see
be
you, I'm
like,
doing it.
"What?"
I want a text from you if that happens, and all you have to do is say it happened, and I'll know what you're talking about.
I will text you that. 'Cause I'm just like, it's because I like the color black, and I'm black, but both things. But people will be like,
But alliterative. It sounds cool. I like the.
I know it sounds cool. I like it.
People.
But also my parents are from the Caribbean, and they had very strong accents. Not to me, but they did to everybody else when I was growing up. And so we'd go to school, my parents would talk, and
now you have to talk like your parents.
No. I'm not doing a bad Caribbean anything. I will ruin it. They actually sound really proper in my opinion, because they have, like, my mom sounds really proper. But people be like, "Oh, I love your mother's accent. Is she from Jamaica?" And I'd just be like, it's always Jamaica. It's the only place they ever heard of. I was like, so, that place with all those islands, there's just Jamaica.
There's just
no
one.
No other possible place you could ask about. They're always like, "Oh, or they wouldn't even ask. They'd be like, "Oh, I love Jamaica.
Yeah.
Have you been?" And I'm like, "I've never been to Jamaica.
Never.
In my whole life. I've never been to Jamaica."
Oh,
They are from two completely different. My mom's from South America, which Guyana is technically Caribbean, but it's in South America.
Yeah.
And my dad is from Barbados, which is an island that people finally heard about. But like, people be like, "Jamaica? Jamaica.
Everything is Jamaica."
I'm like, you guys, there are other islands. There really are. There's like so many islands. Like, come on." So, yeah.
Oh, God.
All right, thank you everybody so much for taking the time to come and talk to us. I think this was a really great conversation. I'm really excited to put this out and have people let us know how they feel and ask any additional questions that they may have. And to wrap up, I just want to go through and have each of you remind us of who you are, where we can find you on social media, and anything else that you would like to add. Abby, let's start with you.
Okay, so my name is Abby. I am also Babs Cosplay, and I just want to, honestly, lasting thoughts is just do your best to help and, just encourage people of color, especially in the cosplay community, or just people in general. That I'm just so tired of seeing people being shamed, whether it's body shamed or whatever, for the characters. A lot of people have put a lot of time, hard work, and energy, into their costumes. So just be as supportive as you possibly can, because you never know what your support is going to do for that person.
Hey, I am Tiffany from Pros and Cons Cosplay. I wear a lot of different hats, but I think kind of what I want to close on is cosplay is a very personal experience for a lot of people. They put a lot of time, energy, and effort in anything, kind of echoing what Abby said. be nice, be kind, stick up for people when you see, injustice happening. It's not one of those things where you see something bad happening and you just like run to that person's demons and be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Is there something you can do in the moment to help support that person? If you see negative comments, you can denounce them. If you see some rules or something in your local convention scene that need tweaking or need to have a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens, write to them and tell them that you want to see those kinds of things done. Ask for diverse guests at your convention. Ask for diverse representation on staffs and in directorate positions as well. So, we want to increase the representation that we have. And I think that's important, not just knowing that diversity, equity, and inclusion is a thing, but also, really trying to embody it in our different spaces.
And Monica?
So what I like people to get out of this panel as well, as you are presented with all of the different resources and now like people who are actually knowledgeable about this topic, it is our job to educate ourselves about other people's cultures and to be mindful about how we portray our cosplay, keeping in mind that people who are like races behind these characters, it's very important how we educate ourselves before we even dive into a cosplay.
And where can we find you online?
Oh, sorry. And you can find me at Geeks A Go Go everywhere.
Okay, and Jamila.
And I'm Jamila from Black Betty Cosplay. I can be found pretty much under that everywhere. And what I just want to add to kind of echo everybody is cosplay is an awesome hobby that's full of so many different unique people. And that's kind of one of the awesome things about the hobby. There's no one right way to do a cosplay. And just being mindful, being respectful, supporting each other, because we're all doing this geeky hobby together. Like, why not support and uplift everybody? So just, let's work together instead of trying to tear each other apart, and just be thoughtful about other people's feelings.
And I'm Abby Cat Cosplay. And the last thing, or as somebody who does a lot of panels, I also just want to add, please ask your Black and POC friends to be on more than just diversity panels. It's a great topic to talk about. Obviously, we just spent 3 hours talking about it. But there is a lot more that minority people can contribute to the conversation outside of that. So if it's sewing, if it's prop building, if it's, whatever, make sure you're including Black and people of color in those conversations as well. And you can find all of us in the SheProp community. Feel free to join us in the SheProp community. We would be happy to have you. If you are a woman or non-binary or trans, it is a safe place for you. So thank you all very much for joining and for coming and talking to us today. I had a great time, and I hope you guys also too.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I kind of want to end all my panels with say goodbye, cosplayers, and then I'm gonna go goodbye, cosplayers. So I'm afraid I'm too old and nobody else will get that.